Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. There's a concept called reclaiming the narrative. I'm sure you've probably heard about it before now. Reclaiming the narrative means not just stopping others from speaking for us, but also speaking up for ourselves. In fact, that's the main thing it means. We see this all the time, people reclaiming the narrative, but mostly it's where politics and media intersect. That's usually when you hear that phrase used the most, and actually when the rubber meets the road. Things like delineation. Well, that's an important part of what it means for us, reclaiming our own narrative. When people tell us that standing by our lineage is divisive, quote unquote, that's them trying to stop us from reclaiming the narrative. When people are running around trying to shame us into doing what they want, when they tell us you shouldn't be saying to only spend money with those who spend it with you, that's them trying to stop us from reclaiming the narrative. The narrative being telling the truth. We have the right to say how others have been behaving towards us and to say that we won't allow it anymore. How many times has this happened to you or someone you know? You go out, you need to buy something, you go into a store, restaurant, shop, whatever, you make your selection, and then when it comes time to pay, that's when it hits you. These people that you're about to give your money to, they would never be doing that for you. The shoe would never be on the other foot. You would never have a situation where you're the one who's the friendly merchant and you realize that the person that you're about to give your hard-earned money to, they would never come to you and actually spend money with you. And it's not because you don't have the right items or because your work or your goods are not of the right quality. It's because they make it a point not to spend money with you. As far as they're concerned, the money's only supposed to flow in one direction. Out of your pocket and into theirs. And it's at that very moment that you're reminded you are actually rewarding somebody for putting an economic boycott on you. And that matters because the basis of all exchange is reciprocation. And it's all-encompassing. It's not just for a single transaction. It has to do with how you deal with people on a variety of levels. You want to change a situation, you gotta stop and think. But the first thing that has to happen is you have to stop. Meaningful analysis or any sort of contemplation is almost impossible to do when you're on the run, when you haven't stopped long enough to consider what it is that you're doing. Exercising power means exercising discipline. White power has spent decades now setting up a paradigm where it's helped everyone else to leapfrog over us. It does this by making it seem convenient to spend money with anti-black racists, but we've been living the consequences of this folly, and it hasn't been cheap at all. Now, whenever black people create something, everybody else feels that they have the right to come along and call themselves reverse engineering their own version of it, one where they try to sell what it is that we have created and contributed, but without giving us any of the profits that we made possible. You see, if you're somebody who likes to go to a particular type of restaurant or a particular type of shop, what should happen if black people are operating like everyone else is that you would have a black person who creates that kind of shop on their own and you would buy from them. You would never go to the actual group who actually created it because, well, they're outside the community. That's what everybody else does when it comes to black people. And black folks think to themselves that it's convenient to spend money this way, but what you're doing is cutting your own throat. Most people act without thinking, and systems of oppression rely on that. When people stop to think, they're only a hair's breadth away from changing what they do. There are, of course, people who hate the fact that we speak like this, but why is it that they never seem to hate the people who decide that they're going to economically boycott us simply because we're black? How come nobody ever seems to have a problem with that one? Nobody ever goes up to these other groups and says, you know what, if you don't spend money with black folks who are your customers, why on earth should they spend money with you? These complainers all act the same way, with outrage, most of it phony, as if we don't have the right to decide who we give our money to, our vote to, or even our time to. Nobody ever looks at black people acting in our own self-interest and says, you know what, that's great. What these guys are doing, that's what ought to happen. Everybody else does it and it's not an issue. We do it and it's a threat. Black people deserve to have the best, but deserving isn't enough. You have to build it, and that means you have to support it. And that process begins before you even spend any money. You have to act deliberately. We must all practice resource management. Who and what you give your money to and your time to is everything. And that's the reason why you hear me constantly complaining about black folks' habits when it comes to sports and entertainment, which is the same thing. As black people, we are hideously oversampled when it comes to the entertainment that we consume, especially when it comes to comedies. As black people, not a doggone thing's funny, and yet we're trying to find some way to laugh regardless. And these are the things that black people have chosen to spend their money on. When you give away your money, you're also giving away your power too. Some people are trying to make themselves feel better about a lot of the changes that the black grassroots are demanding by saying, well, we can't be making no kinds of changes and we shouldn't be doing nothing different after all. The enemy is coming at us now. We's is under attack. We've been getting attacked the entire time. The only difference is that now people are forced to have to face it. People are being put in a position where they may actually have to fight back, and a lot of folks don't want to. They want to keep on doing what they've been doing. See, that's one of the loopholes in human psychology. Most people are able to adapt, and that's humanity's strongest trait, that we can adapt to things, but the bad part of it is, on the flip side, you can become adapted to oppressive circumstances, which means you take that as being normal, when it's not. But if you allow other people to shame you into acting against your own best interest, before long, you will have abandoned the truth of the reality of the world you live in, and you will have taken up a false narrative that they handed to you. Time to take the narrative back. The 2020 uprisings was the last time that Democrats had any political momentum, but how did they repay black people who took to the streets? Black people were the ones who made the thugs in blue take the knee, and the Democrats, at least for a little bit, pretended as if they were down with the struggle. At least they tried to tiptoe around the edges, make a couple of insincere noises as if that's what they meant. But as soon as Biden was declared the winner, the Democrats immediately reverted to type and began saying, "Stop sloganeering, stop sloganeering, sloganeering kills. That slogan, defund the police, that cost us elections." Now, they told this lie after an election where they had won. Republicans have been spending most of that year predicting that the Democrats would be utterly crushed in the 2020 elections. They repeated the tired, stale mantras about law and order, and we need the police to enforce white privilege. Oh, look at the property damage. Oh, America's going down the drain. It's the apocalypse because black people are fighting back. They brought back all the golden oldies. And what happened when it came election day? Democrats blew the Republicans away. All of that so-called property damage didn't matter to the voters because people were understanding why this stuff was happening. That's what happens when you reclaim the narrative. When the police are on their knees and people recognize the police as the oppressors, they're not going to look at you and say you're wrong, but that only happens if you are bold in speaking the truth. Keep in mind, it was a Democrat DA who had refused to prosecute Derek Chauvin, and when the uprisings began, that scumbag was forced to flee town. That scared the Republicans. But the truth is, it also scared the Democrats, too. In fact, it scared the Democrats more, because it showed them exactly what that base could do if that base felt that voting was irrelevant and didn't make a difference and didn't matter anymore. The kinds of shills, tethers, bootlicks, and hangers-on who don't like it when we withheld our vote are also angry because they're afraid we're going to start withholding our money next. They don't want this to become habit-forming. If we get on code for one thing, then what's to stop us from getting on code for everything? One of my little sayings that I like to repeat from time to time is that if you want people to like you, then just go ahead and say yes to everything. Go ahead and be their doormat and say yes, and people will pretend to like you. But if you want to be respected, you better start learning to say no. If we start telling these politicians that we require something tangible in exchange for our vote, then what's to stop us from telling all these other folks who have been getting money from us that we require something in exchange for our business too? Nothing happens in a vacuum under white supremacy, and that includes our political and economic activity as well, which are nothing more than flip sides of the same coin. The reason that people get angry with us whenever they see these acts of self-determination is because it's been decades since we've actually put forward some sort of resistance to the narrative that we went along with. This time, though, that resistance didn't come from political operatives who were planted amongst us. This time it came from us, from within. We're finally becoming politically mature again to the point that we stopped asking permission to put our foot down. The only way to get mistreatment of any type to stop is to confront the people doing it. Ignoring abuse will never make it go away. And we don't need everyone on board in order to get the ball rolling either. Reparations didn't become a real political issue overnight or by having most black people on board with it. It came about by having enough of the right black people on board. Changing a culture is what we're doing. We all have a part to play in making this change, and you can start right where you are. Start by seeking out black businesses to spend your money with. And stop relying on the excuses to not do so. If someone's shop doesn't have the newest and fanciest amenities or what have you ever considered the fact that maybe it's because they don't have enough black people doing business there? We love to be proud of black businesses that thrive, but success is never accidental. It's deliberate and intentional. Success is also a habit. When you practice patronizing people who never patronize you, then you're practicing dysfunction. And when you practice making excuses to spend money with everyone except for black people, then you're practicing self-defeat. Black people have allowed ourselves to become conditioned to demand standards from other black people that we never demand of people who will shoot a black child simply for having entered their store, or who will use the money that we give them to keep killer cops from going to prison, or to fund anti-black organizations and zealots, and to prop up tethers, bootlicks, and sellouts who will then run for political office so that they can fight against our interests every single day. We all recognize the necessity to stop the self-sabotage, and that process begins by no longer allowing others to bribe us with our own money. That's the reason why what you do is so important. Don't ever let anyone try to demoralize you by saying, well, you're just one person. Well, it's just me. No, it's not just you. Don't let anyone ever talk you into buying into a narrative of helplessness. When you decide that you're going to take it upon yourself to tell your story, you'll also find that you've taken the power to change it too. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Jerlene Harris, Pamela Hyman, Wesley Monroe, Keith B., and Starlet Thompson. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.